I'm John Batchelor, Thaddeus McCotter, my colleague and co-host. We're headed to the Affordable Care Act. There is good news for the Affordable Care Act right now on St. Patrick's Day. Very good news. Who knew the Affordable Care Act was Irish? We're welcoming Lara Brown of George Washington University and Francis Rose of Federal News Radio. Lady and gentlemen, the good news is this. Suddenly, in a wave of good feeling, the Obama administration is telling us tonight we don't have the numbers. We don't know how old they are. We don't know who's paid. We don't know where they live. We can't know any of that. We're just giving raw numbers here. That we've gone from 4.2 million signed up for the enrolled for the Affordable Care Act to 5 million with days left. 5 million. Celebration time. Thaddeus, I'll start with you. Am I laying it on too thick, or is this appropriate St. Patrick's Day? Affordable Care Act is Irish behavior.
The word is Blarney.
Okay, fine. Good. Then I'm doing a good job. All right, I start with you, Lara. Is the Affordable Care Act Irish? Does this 5 million turn the whole ship around? Does the White House put on party hats? Do we all celebrate and apologize to the president for disdaining his hard work?
Well, no. I mean, let's be honest. The original goal was 7 million. It was reduced to 6. And now, because numbers have been so poor the last few months, I do think that 5 million represents at least a threshold that they're getting in the right ballpark.
A threshold. You're not telling me that we're going to apologize to the president or that America's changing its opinion. Is that correct?
No, I think what you've got is a lot of people who are waiting until the last minute, partly for financial reasons, but also partly because they want to see what is going to really be available when, and are these exchanges actually all going to work.
Francis, a very good evening to you. A story that you exchanged with me earlier today from CBS News suggests that the Blarney, I borrow the word from Thaddeus, the Blarney, that we had to do something for the people in America who are uninsured and were being left out of the American dream, that Blarney has met reality. What have we learned, Thaddeus, from Francis, from CBS News?
Well, what we've learned from CBS News and from a company called Bankrate.com is the same thing that officials at healthcare companies were saying before the Affordable Care Act passed, and that is that there are a substantial number of people who don't have health insurance in the United States because they don't want health insurance. And that's their personal decision. They may be making a bad decision, but they've decided they either don't want to pay for it or don't think they need it for whatever reason. The number that Bankrate.com is saying is a third of Americans that don't have health insurance plan to stay that way. Now, that's actually, in a way, good news for the administration, John, because that means those people will be subject to the fines in the Affordable Care Act, and they'll essentially be paying money to the government for no reason, and the government also won't have to pay a subsidy for their health insurance policies if they were entitled to one. So, in a way, it could be good for the administration and good for taxpayers.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Thaddeus, I go to you. I do not believe the Obama administration will fine anyone unless you're a certified billionaire, and then, of course, you have health care. Do you think that they're actually going to level a $95 fine against somebody who's 29 years old, healthy, and doesn't want to buy insurance? You think they're going to go and dun him or her, Thaddeus?
And may vote Democratic?
Yes.
I think the odds may be against that. I think, of course, if you're a 50-some-year-old Republican with a job that doesn't provide health benefits and you're dodging paying it, they might make an example of you. But I think it goes back to the crux of the problem. If the bill is there to help these individuals, why aren't they availing themselves of it, and why does it take the heavy hand of government to threaten to punish you to get you to do something that's good for you?
I've never figured out that answer. I can't quite. It's a puzzle to me. What was the thinking that was going on in 2010? I know I'm exaggerating this a little bit, but what was the thinking that you were going to dragoon people to health care that they had to pay for? Where did that idea start, Thaddeus? It reaches all the way back to the Clinton. They were beating us over the head with the uninsured, and if we just give them a chance, they'll line up. When did they suspend common sense in Washington?
Well, John, you've used the word thinking, the word idea, and the word common sense in relation to Congress. I think you may have been celebrating St. Patrick's Day a little earlier.
Okay, fine. Back to Lara Brown. We're going to hold her responsible for the fact that the president is not enjoying approval after these 5 million people have shown up. Lara, the president's approval ratings are terrible. They're awful for a man who was elected so wonderfully, resoundingly in 2012. My reading of these numbers is that it really doesn't matter what happens. It's worse the next week. Ukraine, the Middle East, the missing airline, now the Affordable Care Act. It's all heaped on Mr. Obama. What's he doing wrong?
Well, the biggest thing that he's doing wrong is he's been there too long. One of the things that is true is that presidents in their second term tend to fall and lose their approval ratings the longer they've been there. Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton are the only two presidents who really saw sharp spikes in their second terms upward. And it's also important to note that we happen to be in a highly polarized period right now. So the problem for the president was a similar problem that George W. Bush had. It's not that he's lost the opposition. The opposition has been against him for a while. It's that now it's the independents and his own party members that are starting to sour on him.
Francis, the testimony by the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Sebelius, says that Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act premiums are going up next year. Do people know this, Francis, that it's going to be more expensive to have what you don't want to buy in the first place?
Well, you know who is really bothered by this right now, John, is Washington Democrats, Washington, D.C. Democrats. Was reading just before I came on the air with you a story about Senator Mark Pryor down in Arkansas, who has every single thing in the world going for him. His father was a senator, very popular. He's a sixth-generation public servant in Arkansas with extremely high name recognition and extremely high positives, except for the fact that he voted for the Affordable Care Act, and that has him in a neck-and-neck race, not over 50%, in his home state against a 36-year-old Republican who's only been in Congress for a couple of terms, a guy named Tom Cotton. And Lara can tell you, if he's not above 50% at this point and he's got such high positive name recognition, he has a really long road ahead of him. And the only thing people can attribute it to is the Affordable Care Act.
30 seconds, Thaddeus. Does it feel like 2006 to the other foot here, that the wave is coming and the Democrats can't stop it even if they want to?
Not yet, but it's starting to get there. You're starting to see some riptides and some ripples and some seiches, but you're not seeing the tidal wave yet.
And my memory is that when a wave hits, it goes way too much. It goes over everything. It could damage the whole party, not just the vulnerable. Is that correct?
Yeah, it sweeps away the good and the bad.
Thaddeus McCotter in Detroit, Lara Brown and Francis Rose in Washington. Francis of Federal News Radio, Lara Brown of George Washington University. The president's poll numbers are not good, but 5 million enrolled for the Affordable Care Act. That's positive. I'm John Batchelor.